This is episode number 62.
Mm-hmm. So I think especially for life science, it's very important to be on LinkedIn. This is important, and maybe also on Facebook, especially for the US market. And I think it's always a mix, between LinkedIn, some other social media platforms, but also on YouTube, because people consume via different channels.
Part 3 of the year in review recording. It's another 1 hour and 15 minutes of exciting conversations with speakers from previous podcast episodes and business partners of the hosts. What was hot in 2021 and what do our speakers expect for 2022 are the main questions we discuss in this episode. Here is the third conversation with myself, Christian Soschner, Johannes Sarx, Philipp Hainzl, Stefanie Rösel, and Julia Resch. We were talking in this episode about content marketing with a podcast, the life science industry in Austria, content marketing and social media for B2B businesses, and the history of the Vienna Stock Exchange. I hope you enjoy the conversations the same way as I did. Enjoy the show.
Christian, we haven't spoken about your personal highlights this year yet because, we've had me, we've had spoken to Matthias, but what have been your personal highlights actually?
This was not agreed before. So my personal highlights, I had the second year of the opportunity to look inward. So being in Vienna with no travel, which was very amazing. And I used the time to move the podcast project forward. Started last year as a project that I wanted to start to overcome the first lockdown, which I assumed that it will be over after 2 months. And reality is different now, so we are still partially here in Austria on lockdown. And an amazing thing happened. So the podcast project evolved really well and just kept pushing it forward with a lot of help from amazing speakers, especially you, Astrid, were a great help bringing amazing speakers to the podcast, amazing content, and also Matthias. We had the first year in review last year, which went very well. And I was really, how should I say, pleasantly surprised by the willingness of people to show up online and to share their expertise and their opinion for free with the world, which is great help to encourage collaboration, I think, globally. And after moving forward in summer, I'm reconsidered the position of the podcast and thought, okay, how can we improve that project? And got in touch with an expert in content marketing. She will come online in a couple of minutes, just have, I think, half an hour or so. And we found the Gary Vaynerchuk content strategy and said, okay, can we make use of that? And can we use it for the podcast? Because we produce a lot of amazing content, a lot of interesting content. We have great speakers. And how can we utilize the process better and help our speakers to reach a larger audience and a more targeted audience? So the holy grail of content marketing, I guess. Bigger numbers, but more directed. And we started looking into that space on the operations side from, let's say, mid-October, end of October, early November onwards. And I didn't expect immediate results. So I thought, okay, maybe in 6-12 months or whenever. And already in December, I think the first rankings came in from Apple Podcast, and now the podcast is sometimes in the top 10 or top 20 in countries like Austria, Switzerland, amazingly interestingly Colombia. Also, we were on, I think, in the top 200 in the United Kingdom. And this showed me how important it is today that not only the B2C companies are on social media and are producing content that describes what they are doing. It doesn't necessarily mean needs to be high quality content. It needs just, as you said, Astrid, it shouldn't be deep fake. It should be showing the reality. And my learning this year was that when we do that, when we show what we are doing, when we talk about what we are doing, we are definitely reaching people also in the B2B space on social media. And this was the big learning I had in 2021.
No, it's certainly a great effort. So great what you've built there, and congratulations to the great ranking. So that's really amazing. So keep that up. No, it's really interesting. Sorry, yes, sir.
No, I will definitely do it. I think it's worth moving the project forward. And I see a lot of potential that we can use this, let's call it podcast platform that we've built in the last 2 years for different types of users. I mean, on one hand, there is the startup scene. We have an audience that is about 40% located in North America. So we have a good outreach, and I think connecting also with another communication channel, Europe and the United States, could be a great thing. We can also use it for scientists, technicians, to also support them bringing their science to a wider audience. I also believe that meanwhile, we have not only scientists, investors, and entrepreneurs in the audience, which was the original starting point. I also think that, or see it especially on platforms like TikTok or Instagram, that also more and more people get interested in how are drugs developed, what's happening in the digital space, really, and want to hear the experts. And I think it's a great tool for communicating.
Absolutely. It's also nice that there are so many different topics that you can tackle, not just like healthcare research or drug development, but also from investments. I mean, we will have some more investors on today as well who will give us their insight. But I thought it also very interesting and to hear actually earlier from Sasha about that also in the healthcare space, that you can see that a lot of capital is moving into sort of also early stage opportunities, and that these levels of investment are actually not sustainable. I mean, it's something that we actually see in the blockchain space as well. That's like crazy rounds, crazy valuations at the moment. You really wonder, where that journey goes. How do you feel about this?
The valuations are poor. When I look at the stock market, at the public market, last year in March, in February, March, there was the expected crash. So due to the lockdown. And my first thought or my first emotion was, that's it. So we are going downwards, because the years before 2020, there was always this reset of valuation ghosts looming around somewhere around the corner. And I think every couple of months, somebody said, we will see a big crash soon, but it didn't come. All crashes that I experienced since 2008 were more or less over after a couple of weeks. So 2018, for example, I mean, betting on chips was logically in 2015, but there's always this chip cycle. And 2018, there were a couple of months crash, and then it was a reversal upwards. I really didn't expect in 2020 that the valuations go up in this direction. Cathie Wood's ARK fund, for example, had, I think, the best performance of listed ETFs. She had around 150% uptake in 1 year, which means that also the valuations of the companies went up. When I look at the Nasdaq or the S&P 500 today, all the big corporations like Apple, Microsoft, Alphabet, I mean, on one hand, they make up the majority of the S&P 500 meanwhile, and they have valuations north of 1 trillion, 2 trillion. And I think Apple recently briefly tackled the 3 trillion mark. Is that sustainable? I have no clear answer to that. On one hand, there should be a crash coming. I mean, when I look at the cycles in the stock market. On the other hand, we have a very unique situation that governments all over the world just are printing money on. They use all possibilities to throw money amongst people. And the logical thing is to take the money, invest it on the stock market, public market, or in digital assets. When will that change? I really don't see any, let's say, any other option to real estate, to equity investments, or investments in digital assets. Bonds are dead as long as the interest rates are not going up. And with the combination of inflation, I mean, like the Fed announced a couple of days ago that they will have 3 steps of increasing the interest rates next year. I mean, when we have 6 to 10% inflation per year and we see 0.5% of uptake, I don't think it will change much. How do you see it, Astrid?
Yeah, difficult question. I mean, as a fund, you always hope for, a bear market because you have more time to actually research projects, the valuations go down and all that. So we would actually hope for, not as necessarily a crash, but that, we stay, sort of going sideways for a while. That would already be quite helpful in that respect. But as you outlined, I mean, it's really difficult to see, where the crash would come, and maybe but that's also maybe the reason why it will crash at some point, because a lot of people out there, are throwing money at assets that they don't understand, in the hope also of achieving higher returns. I mean, stock market is the same, like with digital assets. You really need to do your research well and understand what you're actually investing in, take all primary and secondary information that you can get really to make up your mind. And in digital assets, I think it's even more difficult. And we sometimes, when we actually look at the top 20 at the moment, I mean, we literally could cry all day long because it's just made up of coins that have been pushed sort of through social media, but most of them don't carry any value, which also shows you how difficult it is to predict market dynamics at the moment. Yeah,
I see a few changes or trends, bigger trends that create a different reality, I think, that we have now compared to the crash in 1987, for example, or even the crash in 2000. On one hand, it's the retail investors. So when I look at apps like Robinhood, for example, or here in Europe, Flatex, there are more people investing in equity and also digital assets than we saw 20, 30 years ago. I think this is one big trend that brings money to the market and also drives the market. And the second one, as I said before, still is that I don't see any option for big investors, for funds to go somewhere else than equity investments when they're on the public market already. And of course, there will be at some point in time a little bit of a shake through of not working business models. But when I look at last year, I think maybe we see in the next decade more micro crashes, but more often, so that we see a downward spiral of 30, 40, 50, 60, 70% within a couple of hours, and then a reversal within a couple of days. And which is very positive, I think, for investors. So as long as you have cash on the side, you can always throw in money. But the result for me is when I look at young people, I think it really makes sense to look on the equity investment side, to learn that very early, to become not only health literate, but also financial literate. So I think these are the two main success factors in life.
Yeah. By the way, big shout out to Matthias, who is feeding our live audience also with great links here. So.
I'm not sure if this is also visible at YouTube, but I think there's a lot of topics we're touching here. Not so sure if the crash is coming though. I've been actually, while you were discussing, a little bit researching a different sentiment, and according to a few experts, this crash should have already happened. So we are overdue for a crash. Although it's not clear on if this is really happening. Because as I said the other day, it's not so clear how these events should be linked. I guess we've seen some linkings from COVID, for example, into Bitcoin. So Bitcoin is very much linked to this kind of big world news more than the stock market is, in my opinion, or at least how it feels. I'm not a stock market expert, but investor advice, obviously. But interestingly, we see that there is an understanding that the current way forward is not that easy, because we see also these terms, we've been talking about them already, I believe, twice today, such as the Great Resignation, or this kind of massive shift we see in the job market. Also, a lot of people are reinventing themselves. This dubbed the Great Reshuffle. So people are reinventing and finding their own entrepreneurship in this times of crisis, which is also obviously fueled by the possibilities of all sorts of like mainly Web2 platforms. We see a big increase in platforms and participation platforms such as Etsy, which is more this kind of platform where you can create crafted things and then sell them. So a lot of people in the US at least and mainly finding that there are talents and having direct access to a market where they can sell self-produced DIY items. At the same time, also the second-hand market is exploding and booming. We see this in Austria on the example of Willhaben, which is a second-hand marketplace. They also, in my opinion, did a very important move to grow correctly in the and grow precisely in an interesting domain, which is fulfillment and delivery. So the actual supply chain was tackled by them rather early. So they also made sure that there's a payment. It's called pay delivery, I guess. So we see all this. All these positive sides, but there's also negative sides, of course, according to this. So I've recently read a lot of information on how much pressure is actually put on the people delivering these goods that people are ordering and receiving online. So there is, of course, the massive ongoing debate on if Amazon is producing proper systems here that are in place, or if this is an exploitation of users. So in the case, there has been a lot of debate also from a perspective from a legal perspective, because on the one hand, there's a lot of people working for Amazon exclusively, and then they are still so from a contractual position, this looks also a little bit dodgy. This has been thematized mainly in Germany, where there has been a lot of reports like ongoing. So there's all these kind of upsides and downsides to this digitization and to this crisis, but also at the same time, it's an opportunity for a lot of people. And if there's the possibility to change, a lot of people are changing according to these things. So
that's Matthias. It's good to hear. Maybe we pull in. We maybe continue the conversation about this part later on, and let's pull in our next speakers and focus on what's going on in life science in Vienna. I'm very happy that we have the managing directors of Lice Vienna here now in the next 50 minutes and learn more about what's going on in Austria. Welcome to the show, Johannes Sarx and Philipp Hainzl.
Hello, Christian. Thank you for having us. Hello, Astrid and Matthias.
Hello,
this
everyone.
Johannes.
It's good to hear you both. Johannes, Philipp, what's going on in Austria? I heard on LinkedIn that the sector had a tremendous growth in the last 3 years. Could you give us a little bit more insight in that, please?
Yeah, so let's first perhaps talk about the macro level and how the sector developed in the last 3 years. And afterwards, maybe we can talk about more recent events and what happened in 2021. So we have around 1,000 companies now in Austria active in biotech, pharma, and medical devices. So the life science sector is really one of the key industries in Austria. An economy that is in many cases wrongly known just for tourism and the ski industry, but it's really an industrial economy, and life sciences play a growing role. So these companies generated a turnover of $25 billion, which means a substantial increase of 12% compared to 3 years ago. And the industry now employs 60,000 people, and which is also 9% more than in 2017. And overall, we recorded 7% more businesses than in 2017. So we can see that the life sciences industry has grown tremendously. And Philipp, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, Johannes just gave you the picture of Austria, how the industry developed in Austria. And if you break it down to Vienna, we see that Vienna is hosting actually half of Austria's biotech, pharma, medical device, and digital health companies. and as well as the related fields of research, research institutes and academic institutes. So it's really the country center for, and it's also the country center for advanced medicine. So Vienna is home to around 600 life science organizations, including startups, small and medium-sized enterprises, subsidiaries of internationally active large companies, and the before mentioned world-class research facilities with a total of around 41,000 employees. So the importance of this sector can be seen through the revenue. So in Austria, the revenue overall is around 25 billion euros, and in Vienna only, it is around 13.3 billion euros. We have over 42,000 students here, and per year around 8,000 internationally recognized and specialized publications just in the life sciences only. So the revenues and the number of employees in Vienna have grown over the last years by around 9%. And we see up to 20 newly founded companies annually, and a lot of large-scale site expansions in Vienna as well.
So when we look specifically at the biotechnology and pharma sector, and Philipp will then go into more detail in other sectors, we have now 260 companies in Vienna, which are really dedicated to biotech and biotech active pharma companies. So, you know, we are for a long time now in the sector, and I don't think we could have imagined 20 years ago that we will have almost 300 companies just in Vienna.
I think we had 3 or 4 or something like that. It's exaggerated. So we have 200x, 100x.
So that's some kind of exponential growth there. So what are the main indications they're active in? That's cancer, respiratory diseases, and of course, infectious diseases. Vienna has always been known for that, and COVID has even made this more important. So most of the companies are really in the development of new drugs or drug components, or also solutions to advance or improve drug development, or of course diagnostics. So COVID was of course of great importance in the past 2 years, and many companies could build on their pipeline they already had in development in the past years. So these companies include, of course, Tamirna, PeptiCo, Biomay, or Lexington, Marinomed, let's think Tamirna, for example, or Valneva, the former Intercell, which is also in vaccine development. So there's a lot of companies developing drugs, vaccines, or other components for medications against COVID. But that's not all. We have also companies developing research reagents, which is also a large part of that industry or industry segment. And sustainable and circular economy are also gaining importance. And perhaps, Philipp, you can report about that a little bit.
Sure. So in addition to biotechnology and pharma, Vienna is also home to a strong medical device sector. That is, it's around 250 companies, comprising mostly of sales and distribution companies. However, we see more and more entrepreneurial spirits. We see more and more startups that address business opportunities, like at the interface of IT, material sciences, or the biotechnology. Software as a medical device, digital health, and everything that involves big data sets and artificial intelligence clearly stands out. So the number of companies in Vienna in the field of digital health has tripled within the last 6 years. So just to give you a few examples of startups and success stories for Vienna. So we have Context Flow, we have the Image Biopsy Lab, MySugar, that was acquired by Resch a few years ago. There's Scarlet Red and Gesund. So, and besides this digital health, medtech companies are mostly develop and produce single-use devices, active implantable devices, and in vitro diagnostics like Technoclone or like in genetics, for example.
That's amazing to hear, especially the high number of successes and also the statistics behind it. As you said, Johannes, 20 years ago, it was pretty much empty. Also, when I look, for example, at the Biocenter, I remember it from a days at Nabriva in 2006, 7, and 8. I remember it as a huge field where nothing was going on except Intercell. And when I look now at this area, there are many buildings, there are many facilities, many companies, great research, great development going on. And as you mentioned also, and also other speakers, I think we got a great push for scientists and entrepreneurs and investors in the life science area with the pandemic. The question I have to you, what are your expectations for 2022? Will that be a lasting effect, or do you see a reversal?
We think it's a lasting effect that will even accelerate, because maybe looking back at 2021, what we have seen makes us really optimistic about the future. So let's start with the opening of Boehringer Ingelheim's large-scale cell culture plant, an investment of an astonishing 700 million euro that generated 500 new jobs. So they opened only in October. You can only imagine how many talents are attracted by that investment to Vienna, and also the additional effects this investment brings. There was also the groundbreaking of a new manufacturing facility for HOOKIPA Pharma, which will bring another 100 top jobs to Vienna in the future, in the upcoming years. And they will manufacture clinical material and commercial products for their immunotherapies there. So that's a big point for the future. And next door to HOOKIPA, also in Aspern, for those who are not familiar with Vienna, Aspern is a new urban development around 10 kilometers outside of the city center, which was developed completely on scratch and will host many 10,000s of new inhabitants, and it's already developed to a large extent. And so this concept also includes industrial development, and new biotech companies are attracted by that. So apart from HOOKIPA, Biome also is constructing its new GMP production there. They are renowned for their recombinant proteins, mRNA for vaccines and gene therapies. And I'm not yet finished with the new investments coming up in the future. So Takeda announced in November that they will invest 120 million euro in a new R&D center focusing on biologics and gene therapy in Vienna. So two large companies, worldwide known companies, have stepped up their investment in Vienna, and other companies are also heavily investing into new manufacturing and research capacity. Also, AOP Austrian, for example, opened their new headquarters and packaging unit in the city. And also Litos, which is a world leader in ceramic additives manufacturing, is attracted to the city. And also Virosure, which is also known by many in the industry, has expanded their premises. So you can see that there will be thousands of new jobs created in the city in the upcoming years. And we always, you and I, we know what other effects those investments have, because there will be new entrepreneurs with new ideas. And so we are very optimistic about the future of the life science industry in Vienna. Perhaps, Philipp, you want to add to that?
So let me just move a bit to the expectations and the plans for 2022. So there are, of course, some more projects on the rise. So Vienna will become the home of the newly founded Austrian ERT co-location center, ERT Health co-location center, and Lisa Vienna is fully supporting this development. And we expect this step to advance the existing supporting ecosystem. In addition, there are big plans for next year regarding lab space to accommodate scale-ups and the innovators of tomorrow in Vienna. So the business agency and the city of Vienna is a key player in this regard, and we are scanning the area constantly. We are trying to observe what developments are happening on the private sector, but we're also working with the city of Vienna and trying to push some interesting projects in different districts and areas of Vienna. Besides that, we expect the approval of a new notified body for medical devices and in vitro diagnostics in Vienna by 2022. So, as you know, this is a very urgent bottleneck in the European Union. Despite the prolonged timelines towards the medical device and in vitro diagnostics regulation. And hopefully there are also some events and festivals planned for next year. So
that's a good point, Philipp. Yeah, we should not miss out on that.
I hope so. Yeah. Hopefully in person, in real life.
Yes, absolutely. So there is a big innovation festival planned in Vienna. So please mark your calendars for the Vienna Up 2022 and join our business meeting on the 31st of May. So we will hopefully gather at Stadtpark at Brüssel and Hübner, and we will provide some updates on funding and financing opportunities and free consulting services. And there will be plenty of room for gathering, networking, and partnering.
And perhaps last but not least, we will have our 20th birthday as Lisa Vienna next year. So we're planning for a big party on 27th of September. So everybody save the date, and we keep fingers crossed that we will have basically a lockdown-free birthday party on that day and celebrate the successes of the life sciences industry in Vienna in the past 20 years.
Thank you very much for this great update. It's good to hear that Vienna and Austria in life science is developing well, not only on the company side, as I hear, and I couldn't agree more, Johannes and Philipp, that from every company that started in Vienna, I think at least 2 other companies evolved, if not 5 to 10.
Right.
Absolutely.
So it's cascading effect, and it's really beautiful to see. But not only in Austria, also, for example, CRISPR Therapeutics, the directors and founders were from Austria or worked in Austria. So also internationally, there is a lot of success that started a little bit in Vienna. And it's also good to hear that on the infrastructure side, amazing investments happen. I think this is also a very important part for the industry, that we build more and more infrastructure, that the scientists who want to become entrepreneurs also have places to work that are easy accessible. And I think also there we can't have enough. Philipp and Johannes, I wish you and your teams and your families all the best for 2022 and a Merry Christmas.
Yeah, thank you also from the whole team of Lisa Vienna to all of you. Merry Christmas and a great and successful year to 2022.
Thank you. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays, and I hope we can meet in person again next year.
So do we.
Have a great day. Bye. So it was really great to hear how well Vienna evolved. And now we switch the topic a little bit from life science development more to the content marketing side. And I welcome on the show Stefanie Rösel from Germany, Berlin. Stefanie, good to see you.
Hi, Christian. Good to see you.
Stefanie, how was your 2021?
Well, in 2021, I actually realized, so I'm positioned in content marketing and life science content marketing, and I realized that content marketing is more important than ever before in 2021, and also social media is more important than ever before. And yes, so the best example, I think, is one of my life science B2B clients, where we had a quite successful lead generation campaign. It was a webinar series, which we have promoted on LinkedIn and really pushed through LinkedIn and to newsletter campaigns. And yes, we had 70% attendees and also follow-ups. And this was very, very amazing to see. And made me think about the impact of content marketing and also on social media marketing. And so what's behind that? And I mean, imagine you become aware of a company or a person you do not know before. Yeah, for example, you receive an email or you get contacted as part of a matchmaking event. And so what do? And maybe, Christian, if you don't mind, you can answer the question. So what would you do in this case?
I think in the old world, it was basically nothing. So before 2020, it was just at the conference, for example, it was just looking at the conference system where a little bit of information was. What I heard also from the listeners to the podcast when I raised that question was that when they get a cold email, for example, in the inbox, immediately they jump on Google and enter the name of the company or enter the name of the person and then they actively search for content. So this is the message I got. How do you see it, Stefanie?
Yes, so I absolutely agree. And the thing is, people start consuming digital content, whether it is on LinkedIn, whether it is on YouTube, or they Google. Yeah, they consume digital content to get a picture of a person or to get a picture of a company or to get a picture of a product. And in the same way, they consume digital content to get an answer to a question or to solve a pain point. Yeah. And if we all get back into our own minds and observe how we do that, yeah, I think we can all agree we go directly into the World Wide Web for finding solutions. And actually, what does this tell us? Yeah, what are the messages behind? And the first message is that, for sure, communication behavior has changed, and especially with the pandemic, and also in B2B world and also life science. Yeah, the consumer market made the first step in this direction, and B2B and life science moves on. Yeah, and this is the first learning. And the second learning is that so buying decisions or the decision to cooperate with a company or to find a partner for collaborations will in future really very strongly depend on the digital identity of a company and the digital presence of a company. Yeah, and this means coming back to content marketing, that content becomes a differentiating asset. And everyone who wants to make business must take this step to stay in the market in the future. And so what I observe when I talk to my clients, so my clients comprise startups, small to medium-sized companies, and also some global players as well in life science. Everyone is struggling a bit, because it's really crazy times at the moment, and the evolution is so fast. Market and digitalization and communication underlies a very strong evolution pressure, and everyone's struggling with that. So and then they ask, okay, so what shall I do? Is that right? What is the best approach? And it is not so clear to the majority of companies, and that's quite clear because the evolution is so fast.
I couldn't agree more when I think to my experience with games, being online for players was quite a logical step back in 2008 when when PlayStation, for example, and also the Xboxes and everything around that went online. And players happily created their digital identity. So it was quite easy to reach out to understand who is this person in-game, who is this person in real life. But when you look at the B2B world, basically nobody was on social media, nobody was online. And I believe that changed. What you also said, I believe that changed due to the pandemic. And when I look now on LinkedIn, the platform you mentioned, or on Twitter, or even on Facebook, many of the people I know that I remember as being social media agnostic, now out of necessity use these tools. So the question that you raise and your clients, I think really is what's the best approach for B2B businesses to deal with the situation? What's your opinion as an expert?
So I think the best approach for each company or for each product or for each project, it really depends a bit. Yeah, you have to figure out each time anew, depending on products, on what you aim to. Yeah, but there are several basics to consider which move you on the right way. And the first thing is content. Actually, yeah. So you need more content. And with content, I mean audio content, video content, and of course also written content. Yeah, not everyone enjoys audio and video. People also want to read. And the question is, when is content relevant? And this is what also my clients ask me all the time. What is relevant content and how can we make it to produce relevant content? And relevant content is solving a problem, yeah, and solves a problem and brings a benefit. Because people do not buy at the very end a product, they buy a solution, yeah, and this solution brings relief because the solution increases something, decreases something, you can save, you can be a better person, you can make the world to a better place, yeah? And this is what people buy. And at the end, they do not buy a product. So if you want to create relevant content, you really need to have a problem solver mindset or a relief bringer mindset. Yeah, relief is sounds a little bit better than problem solving. And for that, very, very, very important point is to decipher your target group. Whatever your target group is, whether it is a potential client, whether it is, I don't know, a startup you want to invest in or something like that. Yeah. So decipher your target group and unravel the pain points and needs within the target group. And this brings a lot of benefit. Yeah. And then you bring this together with your value proposition, with your product, with your solution, and then you have the sweet spot so that your target group cannot resist and thinks, oh my God, that's so great. I'd like to collaborate with this company because they bring a real benefit into my business. Yeah.
I have a little question because, this it sounds exciting. I think you're totally right to point out to the audience to say also, you have to always keep your focus on the product. But if there was a company, and they're sort of tight of budget or time, and you say like, what are sort of like the top 2 or 3 platforms that they have to be on? Otherwise, they're basically not existing in the digital world.
Mm-hmm. So I think especially for life science, it's very important to be on LinkedIn. This is important, and maybe also on Facebook, especially for the US market. And I think it's always a mix, yeah, between LinkedIn, some other social media platforms, but also on YouTube, yeah, because people consume via different channels. And I think before setting up a campaign, it's quite worth to take a deep dive into the target group and to ask the question, what is the informational behavior of this target group in order to reach the people on the ways they go, yeah? And then I'd adapt the strategy to these channels. But what is actually for sure is it's definitely LinkedIn and it's definitely YouTube and also some other platforms which are worth to play.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, we see the traction quite quickly on our podcast since you help. So it's really worth looking in that direction, as you say. And there's a quick turnover in downloads. So here in the podcast, I have another question to you, a final question. When you look at 2021, what was your personal biggest lesson?
Well, so my personal biggest lesson was to try to cultivate a very, very open mindset in order to deal with this very, very fast development in the market. And ideally also a very balanced mindset, because it's not easy to go through these challenging times. And I decided never to stop learning for myself and also together with my clients, and just take a step forward, check out new things, be very open-minded, always question the approach, try to figure out what is the best way to achieve your goal. And I think in the current times, it's very important to be very, very tolerant. To be very tolerant with each other, very honest, and to discuss, of course, things and different opinions, but at the same time, accept also that maybe other people have other opinions than I have. And I think with that mindset, I will also go into 2022 and looking forward.
That are sound words, especially being open-minded and also tolerate other people's opinion and have an open conversation about it. You were talking about 2022. What's your outlook in content marketing for 2022?
Mm-hmm. So for 2022, I will definitely move forward in this social media direction. As I'm also involved in the podcast, as I'm covering the content marketing part, I will definitely try to benefit my customers with these new approaches and to make them even more successful. And I'm really looking forward to do more on social media next year, because I think this is really the future of marketing.
I also believe that, and also Matthias and Astrid already pointed out the transition from Web 2.0 to Web 3.0. What's your opinion in content marketing? What effects will we see, Astrid and Matthias?
Excuse me, what effects we see?
We see with the transition from Web 2.0 to Web 3.0 on the content marketing side.
Well, one huge aspect was, of course, deplatforming. We have seen this also in this year. Some mostly people which are not following the canon are deplatformed. So a big challenge that a big problem that Web3 projects solve are to make sure that people cannot be censored on these platforms. There's a few other aspects in terms of social media which are, of course, challenging and threatening, in my opinion. So we see a lot of dominance of conglomerates, like really large providers that are harvesting data. So profiling is becoming much easier. Credit scoring is becoming much easier. So personally, I'm not using social media so much anymore. I know the people who even trash their phones and so on. So I guess especially from a perspective of security research and all that, it becomes a massive target. So social engineering becomes much easier through social media. Data is never actually deleted. We see also a lot of the leaks that happened in this year have been due to bad security measurements at large companies. So there's also, of course, Facebook and the likes that use not particularly well developed software parts. I mean, one aspect can be, and Facebook in this regard is actually, on the other hand, also doing a lot for open source. So the funny thing is that you cannot think of the whole open source industry without these big tech giants. So it's in a way an absurd situation we're finding ourselves into. Then on the other hand, all these other approaches to conquer this market dominance have not really played out well. So there's a lot of debate, especially in content marketing, where there's individual smaller attempts, so smaller products, niche products, almost booming. Like for example, Substack, where also this whole podcast here is also very active. I've seen Christian, you have been super active there, which I find interesting. So there's a lot of a move away from these platforms which have dubious kind of content policies, especially in terms of rights of content produced there. A lot of people don't know that they are, in a way, giving away a lot of this, lot of their rights, or like giving away users' rights to the individual platforms. So I find it's also from a traditional perspective to ownership a bit complicated. This has been massively debated and discussed from a lot of Web3 projects, although it is definitely the center of attention right now. So specific topics can be started and debated publicly. So it's the new public, so to say. So it's definitely relevant. I just need to emphasize here that I think we need a strong digital literacy in using these platforms also carefully.
Stefanie, thank you very much for giving us more insights into the importance of content marketing also for the P2P companies. I think it's still good to raise awareness for the importance of that area, as I do see many companies that not only are struggling, but also still have blind spots there. Stefanie, I wish you and your team all the best for 2022, and let's continue our collaboration in the next year.
You're welcome. Thank you.
See you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
So now let's switch around the participants. And our next speaker is from Vienna, Austria, from the stock market in Vienna, which has an amazing celebration this year with, I think it's the 250th anniversary. Welcome to the show, Julia Resch.
Hi, thank you for having me. It has been indeed quite a year to celebrate, wasn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, let's talk a little bit about the stock market and the celebrations for the Vienna Stock Exchange. Can you give us more details what you did this year?
Yeah, so we had also big plans event-wise, but it soon turned out that the pandemic would probably last a bit. And so we switched our formats to smaller discussions, and we split it up in several discussion panels. So throughout the year, we hosted a future forum where we debated topics like growth, how to finance industry via the stock market. We also invited historians to take a look back and also take a look forward. So we did several city tours in Vienna during the summer. And we celebrated, of course, the 250th anniversary on the 2nd of September with a small live event also at the Vienna Stock Exchange. So it was a mix of digital events, live events, panel discussions, hybrid events. We tried to use the possibilities that we have nowadays to leverage this anniversary.
I'm curious. Last year, when we had this, my opinion, huge crash where I thought the world is ending and the capital market is dead in March 2020, it was a very quick reversal. How was the year for the Vienna Stock Exchange in numbers? Did you see also an acceleration in activity, or did you see in Vienna, let's say, a little bit of pandemic silence?
Stock market-wise, the Austrian stock market.
Yeah.
So this year was, the Austrian stock market more than picked up, more than compensated for the losses of last year. So it is among the high flyers, the global high flyers this year, with a performance of roughly 40% in the Austrian national index, ATX. So that's quite a bit. That's quite a performance.
That's good.
Yeah, so it compensated for the losses of last year. And of course, the composition of the Austrian national index is quite cyclical. So whenever the economic growth is picking up, also the Austrian stocks rally. Because of the composition, banks and industrial stocks, they perform always well in these kind of economic cycles.
When I look at the US market, I think I read about IPOs several times a day. So it felt like that in this year. Do you see, or did you see a similar tendency here in Europe and in Austria?
So in Austria, we had the most active year in our junior market, which focuses on SMEs. So we saw 8 listings on the Vienna MTF, and we also had quite a surge, a record year for bond listings. And we're confident to also see bigger listings maybe next year. So let's see. The pipeline is filling up.
Yeah, I hope so. It would be good to hear what's going on on the stock market in the life science industry. Which companies are there?
So one of the most prominent new additions was Marinomed. Biotech, we also talked about it last year. They went public in 2019. And also this year they were awarded with the FESE and the European Issuers Small and Mid-Cap Award. They were runner-up in the category Star of Innovation, which is quite some recognition. And I think it's still a blueprint for other biotech and life science companies in that sense that they went through interesting stages to finance their company from public subsidies, investments of AWS Mittelstandsfonds towards convertible bond, and then finally a listing, and then partial exits. So I think this is what other companies could also try to achieve, Austrian companies.
I'm pretty much focused on pharma and life science, and so my world exists of this one industry basically. Which other industries are on the Austrian stock market? Can you give us more insights? What's going on here?
So the main composition of the Austrian leading index is basically financials, basic industries, industrial goods and services, utilities, a bit of telecom and technology, and only a small portion of consumer products. So that's basically the sector classification in the Austrian leading index. But of course, the door is always open for other industries to join, and there's a lot of activity in the life science field. We would love to see more life science stocks on the Vienna Stock Exchange too, and I think investors would also appreciate that. Yeah.
Which I'm curious. I mean, you are in touch with many investors from all over the world and many companies. What trends do you see in your daily work that are ongoing currently?
What trends do we see? So we're a neutral platform, so we cannot give any tips, but definitely a topic that is brought up by both investors and companies is ESG. So many players are dealing more intensively with environmental, social, and governance issues. So that's definitely a trend, and also maybe from the investor side, the trend towards passive investments is also increasing. So that means ETFs are gaining importance. That is a trend that we have seen. It's also relevant in Austria, I think, yeah.
One question out of interest is when I look at, if I remember it right, maybe Matthias can help me a little bit, but I read that some banks are starting or thinking about giving access to digital assets for their clients via their traditional bank accounts. When I look at the stock markets, what trends or what developments could you envision that are happening or already are ongoing that we are not aware of that makes sense to discuss probably for the market in digital assets, regulation-wise?
So I think this topic has 2 dimensions: the crypto speculation trend, and then the technology that is this trend is based on. And I think as a stock exchange, we think so stock exchanges have always been in the avant-garde of any technology that has been used on the market, and we are also using a very, very modern, very fast trading system that is currently the best we can imagine for our investors and our companies. And if there is ever any other technology that is coming up, then we would, of course, use it. I think that technology is not so much the issue as is regulation. So that's the bigger question mark, is regulation in this area. And the value that stock exchange is bringing to the market, both companies and investors, is transparency.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. I couldn't agree more. Astrid, Matthias, how do you see it?
Yeah, I mean, in general, I think regulation is a good thing, you know. I mean, it's also a topic that moves us a lot in a cryptocurrency market or digital asset market. And my standing has always been, you know, we see regulation also as a positive thing, and it's good to set certain standards to protect consumers. But especially when it goes to sort of new digital innovations, it's also quite important to always be sort of in touch with technology leaders in this space to really fully understand the potential of the technology, how it could be used, what kind of business models could come out of it, and not to over-regulate it. So that we end up with a whole over-regulation of technology as such. And that does not only go for cryptocurrencies, but basically everything out there, like AI and everything, yeah.
Few things to add there. This year was also important in terms of regulation when it comes to cryptocurrency in Austria. So there has been a change also in reporting requirements in terms of like gains of trading and other assets in crypto. So there's a lot of clarity now, but there has been also a lot of debate about if that is in the right time and if this has been properly undertaken. So there's this some clarity getting there. I still see the stock market as such as a little bit underrepresented if you look at it how it is in the US, where you would go public much more likely than startups and bigger companies do in Austria. At the same time, on the crypto side, we see a lot of market homogenization also in terms of regulation happening. So there has been the market to crypto assets European Union report and aspects being started, so that we see in the next years for sure some homogenization also in terms of taxonomy of cryptocurrency. So it's not always very clear how these new asset types and asset forms are or can be even compared to traditional financial instruments. So I'm personally very happy to see some movement there because there's a lot of struggles also startups and upcoming companies have to struggle with. So I see that a lot of new inventions and innovation is not easy to get started in Austria. So this is one point that is definitely, or in Europe for that matter. So we see a lot of projects moving to outside Europe. So I would love to see like more returning or like staying, having the opportunity and possibility also to remain in the European Union.
We have seen unicorns in this field in Austria, haven't we?
Yeah, also, yeah, true.
Which ones?
Bitpanda.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it would be good to stay. Julia, do you have a final remark from the Austrian stock market in regards to the upcoming year?
So we have seen a great year. Of course, not every year for the investors is like 2021. It was the best birthday present that investors could have given the stock exchange operator a year like that. In the Austrian traded index, including dividends, we had an all-time high. So to have that in an anniversary year, that's great. But of course, for investors, it's important to look long term, to see the chances on the stock markets and the average returns of 6 to 8% that generally markets can achieve. So this is something to take with you if you're listening today. Take a look at the stock market in general and have a lifetime savings plan, something like that. That would be great.
That's great advice. I couldn't agree more. Julia, I wish you, your family, and the great team at the Austrian Stock Exchange all the best for 2022 and a Merry Christmas.
Same to you. Same to all of you. Thanks for having me.
Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Season's greetings. Bye.
Astrid, Matthias, which topic is next on our list?
That's a very good question because we have so many topics. I started to structure them.
Big one.
Yeah, so we have, I guess we have been speaking about a lot of things, also try to contextualize it a little bit with the speakers. So we have been talking until now about, and this is an This is a little bit not in the right order, but we've been talking about ransomware, cybersecurity incidents. We've been talking about Web 2 and how the Web 3 emerges. We've been talking about the future of research in 2021 and beyond. We have been briefly hinting at the biotech and healthcare bubble, and we have heard that it might not be a bubble, but a sustaining. It's more of a less of a bubble than a sustaining trend. We've talked about Horizon Europe and which is the success of the program of Horizon 2020 in Europe. We have also talked a little bit about artificial intelligence and machine learning in healthcare and the benefits. We have briefly touched on data science. We've also talked about resource scarcity in the times of crisis and how it affects the individual people that have been giving their input here in this podcast. We've been talking about supply chain shortage, talent shortage, the Great Resignation briefly. We've been talking about financial literacy only briefly. I guess this would be a topic we could now speak a little bit more about. We have been touching also health literacy. One topic that I wanted to thematize, which is maybe not so much in the context of financial literacy, but is definitely also affecting the market, is the right to repair. So we saw a few elements and that are still from the year before still very active, at least in the European Union. There's a few new trends and things that play that affect end consumers of technological devices. So personally, I've realized that I also fell into one of these traps, which is, for example, there's a new sign that is been put on end consumer devices such as fridges and home appliances, which are, for example, trying to make it like easier to understand like what is the yearly what is the yearly power usage of that devices. It's very confusing. So personally, I had to buy some appliances, and I was like shocked on how intransparent this is, and then in the end also how this doesn't really boil down to a actual unit price. So the problem is that the question is, unless the prices for electricity are not rising substantially, it's in my opinion better to look at long-lasting devices than to look at these specific ratings, like the energy certificates, which are like very, very differently utilized and get very confusing for end consumers. But one important aspect that I wanted to point out is the right to repair. So we saw a lot of different startups and approaches in making technology repairable to end consumers. The only really big tech giant that was against this was Apple. So they had like a big stance on why this shouldn't be possible and why there would need to be a registered service expert to be able to offer the services. Recently, they have also changed in this regard and offered a self-service repair program, which is set to be rolled out in 2022. So I see this also as a big potential market also for Europe, especially because we see projects such as Fairphone and other projects in this regard where they are really tackling this repair market as an actual funnel, or they see the opportunity in end users repairing their devices. I think it's also a thing that comes with the pandemic because people are sitting at home and they can watch all sorts of like repair things on YouTube, and they can learn on how to so this is also in this literacy trend that we are here bringing up. So there's all sorts of literacies or literacy that people should have these days. So there's like financial literacy, health literacy, digital work literacy, all sorts of literacy.
But it's great that, you have the opportunity these days to really go online and search for these things, because I remember also 8 years ago, I had an issue with my Mac laptop. And at that time, it was still possible to actually open up the thing and then really, exchange parts and play around with it. And these days, it's just not possible anymore. So really are sort of forced to go into a shop, because otherwise you will also lose all warranty and whatever on it. And it's a huge problem. Yeah.
Yeah, this is not only a huge problem. I think also at the same time, people want to be able to understand the technology around them anymore. As we get more and more technological as a society, these things are scary. Even to me, and I would consider myself being an enthusiast and expert. I'm working a lot with hardware as well. I'm working with a lot of projects that are utilizing technology more differently, like for research purposes or for purposes of producing projects that are targeted towards citizen science. So you start to think about standards, you start to think about what type of things do work. Also, if you roll it out in a product. Biggest issue that I experienced this year was the NFC standard. So we had a few projects that have been working with the future of the supply chain and blockchain. And there's this term of digital twins, or like how can you actually make sure that a specific product is unique and the like, the huge topic that is, in my opinion, also important outside of the blockchain sphere. It could actually help making supply chain more efficient, but also like more less error prone, so to say. And in a way, I see here a lot of like problems, especially because Apple didn't implement, for example, and these are like things from a product perspective which you observe. For example, it's not easy to utilize NFC on iPhones because they're implementing the standard differently than exposing all the necessary standards that you would use or want to use. So it's like there's also a pending lawsuit, I guess, like for developers in Germany. They can utilize already the full scope. I will actually substantiate the things that I'm telling here later in a blog post or so you can directly click through. Essentially, there's a lot of confusion also in different standards, and I guess in understanding the technology around us. Because looking at what happens here is that we see also the tech giants understanding that hardware can, for example, also be fostering a lot of customer loyalty for larger products. Yeah. A good example is, for example, the Google Pixel rollout this year. This was maybe also one of these larger product releases that a lot of people were eyeing at, because we had this kind of very, very few tech giants dominating the mobile sector, and Google itself was essentially developing Android, but didn't really have the proper hardware that would be considered like enthusiast or like high-tech stage. So they released phones which they put a lot of research and development funds into, I guess. And the whole industry was a little bit eyeing on this, and especially developers were super excited about what that would mean in terms of like improving end consumer quality in terms of like taking pictures, but also in the what you can develop for those devices. We've seen also that the supply chain shortage, of course, was still in play here, because there's a lot of like pre-orders still for the largest editions of these phones. And we see also how Google cannot solve all industry problems, because there has been a lot of debate about the biometric features of the phone, and there has been a lot of other things mentioned. It's very interesting to see, though, that I guess it becomes very important that these devices play all the tunes, so to say. So we see also the rise of a culture of influencers. So influencers become more and more important. Also, again, putting this back in context with a topic we have discussed before. So there has been the Twitch leak, which is also an interesting leak in terms of data. So you see how much influencers are making, how much money is actually in the content marketing sector, but also in the influencer sector. So I guess a lot of topics we could talk about, and we will be talking about still.
No, but I think also, on the content marketing, what I was thinking, because we also said, all the data that we have floating around, and, how it's been used and how we're all sort of directed towards all these kind of infrastructures, is really that there is sort of, it's great also for companies that they can sort of build their social graphs with all this data, and see, where our whereabouts is, who we're interacting with, what we like, what we don't like, and all of that. And really being profiled. But on the other hand, there's also a huge risk to giving away all that data and making ourselves so transparent. So I also need to be honest, to minimize social media exposure to the absolute minimum that is necessary from a professional level. But I think on a private level, I've actually just stopped with all of that, because it's just, as you also highlighted, there's so much potential for social engineering. And the more we get digital, and it's very clear, the higher there is the risk, and it's easier to leak this data if there aren't any proper security mechanisms in place. I mean, it seems to be the theme of the podcast today here in review, but I think really, if you think about digitalization, you have to overemphasize this issue of security in a long way. Yeah.
So actually, security or like marketing is also a big thing in malware. I've just posted here also ransomware as a service, which I find one of the most extreme. Yeah, they have like there's like marketing campaigns for ransomware infrastructure. So this has been also like in the news all over the place, and I guess you have also read about this. So there has been major crackdown and major takedown of a few large of these operators that were operating ransomware infrastructure. So this is and I have to stress this fact a lot, because I was actually shocked while we have been discussing and researching a little bit of the details and facts and figures. It's insane in the numbers. So I guess this will be also following us in 2022, and I guess it will be still a topic. I hope it will not affect us so much as it already did this year. So it will be interesting to see how this evolves. There is already a few reports out there which explain the market size of ransomware, the market where ransomware is service. I think it's an interesting topic, but we don't have to speak only about security topics, because I guess they've been very dominant already in our discussion.
Yeah, I can bring up new topics with our next speaker. It's Peter Llewellyn Davies, and he is